Now it is my very great pleasure to introduce you to the Director of QUT's Centre for Future Enterprise, Professor Michael ROSEMANN. And Michael will provide the spotlight this evening on the Benevolent Enterprise whitepaper, which I'm sure, like me, you all found a really interesting read. So Michael is a professor in innovation systems. He has authored 9 books with more than 35 years' experience advising industry on innovation strategies. Michael leads the trust management research activity within CFE and is a focus on the professionalism of trust management. So please join me in welcoming Michael.
Thank you so much, Amanda. We're only here because of you. For a university of the real world and universities in general, we have to explore alternative sources of research questions, research funds, and ways of how we can accelerate our research. And I couldn't imagine a better partner than Cisco. But when we have these partnerships, they take universities out of their comfort zone. And so Amanda, on behalf of everybody who benefits here, I really would love to thank you very much for your tremendous support, and of course our friends who traveled quite a bit to join us here for your ongoing support. As Amanda highlighted, I'm very much aware that you trusted us with the next 2 hours of your life. I'm very respectful and I hope we can pay back appropriately. I also said earlier to someone, I don't think that anyone would wake up this morning and say, oh, I wish I could go to an event about the Benevolent Enterprise. And so I want to give you an idea for the kind of questions we try to create at the Center for Future Enterprise. Our interest is in those capabilities that matter tomorrow. So you know that you have to be customer-centric, that health and safety matters, that you have to be effective, efficient, compliant, and so on. What we try to work out, what's next? The learning enterprise, the scalable enterprise, the trusted enterprise. And so tonight is just one example for the attribute that might matter in the future. And for us, we know we do this well. With the first move advantage is if you Google the Benevolent Enterprise, what I did this morning, and the only place you can find is the Center for Future Enterprise. So sort of our little blue ocean strategy. Now, how did we come up with this topic? And I want to give you like 1 or 2 little stories how we actually came up with the topic. So how do you sense what capabilities matter tomorrow? So a few years ago, an airline call center got a call, and the lady said, I need to put my membership on hold because I'm going through this severe cancer therapy. I'm on chemo. And the call center agent said, oh, thank you for your call. Let me check our policies. And a few seconds later, she said, well, I'm sorry to inform you, but the only reason why you can put your membership on hold is pregnancy. Is there anything else I can do for you? Another call, a call center for an insurance company got a call. And insurance companies, car insurance companies get these calls where someone said, I want to cancel the car insurance for my daughter. And if you work in a call center and you have the right script, then you are used to downselling. Is it too expensive? Maybe you can take features out. You know you can delay payment. I said, I'm not interested. My daughter passed away. Silence. So these are 2 situations where humans, without the script of an organization, would act in a very benevolent way. The CEO of the airline later said, the staff in that call center did everything with integrity and compliance. It wasn't benevolent. And that sort of micro-trading off between what seems to be right and what is described as being right is challenging. I'll give you an opposite example. Jumbo is the 2nd biggest grocery store in the Netherlands. And in 2019, they introduced, and Mikael, you can correct my pronunciation, a Ketskassa. A Ketskassa is like a chat checkout. There are more than 1 million people in the Netherlands who are older than 75. And going to the supermarket is one of the very few moments where they have personal conversations. And we talked about this. So our default reaction is streamlining, self-checkout, items per minute, and so on. That's how the habit of improvement works. Jumbo introduced a checkout where if you want to have a chat, you can have a chat. in 2023, 200 jumbos have that sort of slow checkout, which is counterintuitive to your typical retail practice. So that's what we call a benevolent practice. That is the exception and not the rule. So the research question that we created came out of that conversation. And so we asked ourselves, how can an organization implement, scale, overall operationalize benevolence, which seems to be intuitive to an individual, but once we're in the straitjacket of an organization, seems to be incredibly difficult to implement, and if not done well, could come with dramatic economic, reputational, and other sort of disadvantages. So when we asked us as a team, and I'd like to acknowledge Nadine Uston, Vasuna Bandera, and Marlene Voss, who are all here, who contributed to this paper, we said benevolence has got 3 features. And the first one is that is an optional activity. So benevolence, no supermarket in the world has to have a slow checkout line. The second one is, it is occurring at what we call a moment of trust. Now, anyone who's used to process improvement, organizational improvement knows moments of truth when you see a customer and you try to be customer-centric. A moment of trust is not where it's about hyper-convenience, but about hyper-trust. And how, in that moment that I have the attention and an interaction point with my customer, can I build trust? So in a very mechanical way, we would try to identify moments of trust, and benevolence is an option you could pull out in that moment. Most important, if you're benevolent, you put the customer's interest over yours. It's very expensive to run a slow checkout line. It's very, very expensive to not follow your call center scripts. So that's benevolence. And it seems to be the right thing to do. And we try to work out, why do companies not do it on scale? And what can we do so we see more of those practices? So as Amanda highlighted, the trusted enterprise is one of those key topics we're working on. And trust is one of those topics that everybody talks about, but it's hard to put your fingers on. And I said to our team, we need to do to trust what others have done to risk 30 years ago. 30 years ago, risk was not well managed. There was no professional discipline behind it. I very much believe that in the years to come, trust will be as professionalized as risk. In fact, I said to my MBA students, some of them in the audience, if I would be you, I would write down in my CV, I want to become a leading trust designer. I don't know any company in the world that looks for a trust designer right now, but you want to be ahead of the demand curve. And I think that's QT's biggest opportunity. We will always have a latency. We will never be as quick to produce the skills that industry wants. But if we activate research in the right way, we can actually have a negative latency. We are faster than you. And we give you trust designers and data economists before you even know that you need them. And that could be QT's competitive advantage in the future, and we try to contribute. So trust for us has 5 facets. The first one is, I trust you with what? What's your promise? That you deliver in 2 weeks, that the products are okay, there's a 0 carbon emission in the supply chain, and that might vary from customer to customer. We talked to a retailer, and their challenge was that the promise was under-specified, return policies. And if you under-specify your promise, we have no clarity around what do I trust you with. Now, customers, once they have their promise defined, they don't like uncertainty. If you say deliver in 2 days, what's the capability to deliver in 2 days? If I order a product, what's the likelihood that this product is not to my expectations? And that's a sort of engineering component. The second one is vulnerability. Because trust requires uncertainty, sometimes it could go wrong. I trust you more if I'm not vulnerable. This is why, let's say, companies have a very, very convenient return policy. That's why a real estate company in Radcliffe considers saying after 5 weeks, we pay 50% of your rent, but we are unable to rent out your apartment. Do you trust me now? That's a way to reduce vulnerability. More interesting is then above the line, I want to increase confidence, meaning I want to find ways that you believe what I do is trustworthy. Now, what works for you might be a product review by an expert, It might be crowdsourced, it might be an educational experience, it could be a personal experience. And so we have these different buttons we want to press to build confidence. Tonight, we only zoom into that very last bubble that's called benevolence. I trust you even more when you highlight that my well-being matters more than your organizational well-being. And so in order to work out what is benevolence, how do you scale, and what can I do here, we try to find the answer to this question. And sourcing the right research question is incredibly difficult. Finding questions is so much harder than finding answers. But that is a kind of key skill of what we try to nurture, not just in our academics, but in future leaders. And future leaders will compete on questions more than they compete on answers. But we don't train you how to come up with questions. So what we did is we studied what's out there. We studied secondary data like the ones I shared. We have, as Amanda highlighted, the Brisbane Trust Alliance. So we come together on a monthly basis with wannabe trust professionals and co-design tools that might work for future trust architects, trust designers. We even had a chief trust officer in our very last conversation live from London. And then finally, we were lucky to talk to 3 case organizations, and 2 of them in Brisbane, 1 in Melbourne, and they helped us to understand conceptually are the ideas that I present now deployable, and what sort of fine-tuning is required. In the paper that we launched, we give you 8 concepts. I only will share a subset, a small subset. But the way we conceptualize them, there are 4 clusters, and we call them be fair, do right, say yes, and be humane. Say yes relates very much to what I just gave you to start with. Here's a customer with an inquiry that we've never seen before. How do I make yes my default? And then what principles, structures, what funding is required to make this a reality? And be humane means how do I contribute to the life of individuals? Banks in Canada have a mortgage holiday where, for whatever personal reasons, you could park repayments for 4 weeks every year. It's totally your choice. So allow you, under personal circumstances, to activate a process that considers your personal circumstances. So I give you one example. We call it be fair. And be fair means you provide what is right to the customer. I asked our 2 big telcos, when you sell a data plan, and you know this experience, we ask you is it 20, 40, or 60 gigabytes, most people have no idea. And then you get talked into a contract, and most of you don't spend the Saturday afternoons checking how much you consume. Now, if I'm a telco and I can see you consume 30% of your data plan, would I contact you and say, hey, I could downgrade you. Instead of $59, you pay $39. Yeah, that's right. Everybody said, why would you do this? And I said to them, you do this, imagine what the media would say tomorrow. Telstra, Optus, whoever just reduced, under times of extreme inflation, the monthly expense for 80,000 or 800,000 Australians. And now the next quarterly results won't look as great. What will happen to loyalty, advocacy, retention, and those sort of metrics? So that shows you the problem we have here. Awareness is the scenario where warranty expires, 4 weeks to go, and I would say the next 4 weeks are on me. Let us know if there's anything we need to fix for you. So that shows you that be fair means you do things that are costing money in the short term, but hopefully long term will have a payoff, and Nadine will talk about it. The second example I want to quickly provide you is what we call do right. Do right is maybe the most interesting one. So prevention is if you order the same book on Amazon for the second time, Amazon doesn't say thank you and here's the invoice. They say, are you sure? You might have it in your bookshelf. You want to double check? I'm here and I'm waiting. That is when I put your well-being over my well-being. Now you could imagine a world where you drive in your car into the city of Brisbane and your car will slow down to the speed limit because it might be better for you. Some of you might go running and your headsets after half an hour will reduce the volume because the volume you were exposed to wasn't good for you. And if you go shopping in the future, Coles or Woolies might say, watch out, you're allergic to nuts and you buy an item that might not be good for you. That is what we call benevolence. So the fine line between benevolence and privacy is a very, very tight one. But I believe companies in the future will be smarter than you. If they're also more trustworthy, dare I say, than you will hand parts of your life over to them. But for this, you need them to be benevolent. Technology won't be the bottleneck. It will be their ambition and your willingness to trust. Compensation, final item, and maybe topic of the panel conversation. Compensation is when you make up for a mistake. If there's click and collect, I want to collect an item that is not there, you could say, sorry, come back tomorrow, or you could find a way to compensate. That's called service recovery in the service literature. So these are just 4 concepts that I just shared. The paper we launched has more examples, more ideas. Tonight, I just want to raise your awareness for benevolence. And after awareness comes acceptance, meaning that might actually matter to you. And after awareness and acceptance comes action. And we would love to work with you to take some of these conceptual ideas into practice. So in a summary, future decision-making needs to consider multiple dimensions. But leaders gravitate towards an economic narrative. They try to make it one-dimensional. And I don't believe that competing on products alone and price alone will work. Competing on trust, that's a second provocation, might be the future. But if we don't know how to design trust, we can't compete on trust. And finally, benevolence, often when we talk about it, people talk about be honest, be nice. That's what your kind of parents taught you. We try to move from attitude to aptitude. We try to work out, can you script it? If something traumatic appeared, could there be a button that says, send flowers? You might be low in emotional intelligence, but we script, we hard code benevolence into your future processes. So I hope that gave you an idea. You will get the paper tonight, but I'd like to thank everyone who contributed to the paper. We couldn't do that sort of work without empirical evidence, and in particular, Marlene, Vasana, and Nadine, who contributed tremendously. So that's just the sort of setting the scene. So you'd say, I might be still confused, but I'm on a higher level now, in terms of what the paper's all about.